I gotta say, it's a pleasure. My first interview on my new site, Share Pickers Investment Club, of course. It's got to be Richard Harpham, CEO of Escape Hunt, because you are my biggest holding as a company. Richard, thanks for agreeing to do this.
Oh, Justin, it's an absolute pleasure to be here, and also great to see that you're stepping out on your own.
Yeah, well, do you know what? I just want to do, the companies I hold, I'm most passionate about because I've done the most research on, and so it's nice to get to chat to you like this, And we've had quite a few questions from holders here, and let's start off with the questions because there's quite a few of them. People must know what you do if they've submitted these questions. So I won't give it intro to the company, but first and foremost, sites. How many physical sites are you planning to open over the next 12 months, and how do you see the shape of the business in the coming 12 months as well?
Sure. So when we raised money back in July last year, we talked about having a target of 20 owner-operated sites 2 years from that point. So that would be 20 owner-operated sites by July 22. Now, I think that you're aware that we've been making very good progress actually from that point. So already we have 13 sites in the UK up and trading. We have Kingston in build. We have Milton Keynes in legals. So that in itself is 15. We've subsequently bought Dubai, in the process of closing a deal on Paris and Brussels, which will become owner-operated sites for us as well. So as you can see, we're already a very significant proportion of that way there. In the current climate, clearly we are to a degree balancing the cash reserves that we have between growth capital and working capital. But to imagine that, to hit that 20 target site, certainly, we're well on track. And in fact, I would hope we'd do rather better.
Yeah, I recently said, as a leisure company, you're the only one I can think of that's been expanding during the lockdown, because I can't think of any other company. Most companies are shutting down, but you've obviously, and like you say, you've been able to take advantage of the lockdown because several units and areas are going sort of empty. So it's amazing. So there's another question here. Secondly, I put this in because it made me laugh. Do you have plans to come to Swansea?
I mean, as you can imagine, Swansea, I'm sure, is on our list. And forgive me now. I'm sure one of your listeners is going to contradict my numbers. But at least as I understand it, Swansea's population of about 300,000 people. There's not a whole lot of competition there for escape rooms. So clearly, it will be on the list. I'd be lying if I said it was top 5. But what we're really looking for are the best deals where we can get the best returns on the capital that we invest. So to the extent that the right deal comes up in Swansea, absolutely we would jump on it because the demographics are good, the density of population is good, and as I say, it always helps when there's not an enormous amount of competition already in the city.
Yeah, so you can pretty much say any town, any big sort of town or city, it could be coming there soon, because you're looking at all of them, are you pretty much, or?
Well, that's exactly the point. Don't get me wrong. In any company, you don't just throw darts at a map and just hope that you land somewhere. You do take a pseudo-scientific approach to where you want to put your sites and in what order. So forever we're thinking about that interplay between population densities, worker densities, levels of competition, adjacent businesses, etc. And that allows us to build a little bit of a matrix, a bit of an order, if you like, of where we might like to go and in what order. And that gets informed further and further with every new site that we build. As you can imagine, we end up with more of a data pool. But clearly it's not an exact science. And whilst we might have a list, 1 to 10, the right site in the right town still has to fall at the right time and on the right economics. So we kind of marry those dynamics together, and that's how we expand.
Understand. Next question. We played the digital game, the Bletchley Park Papers, over Christmas, and it was great fun. Are you going to do releasing more digital games in the future?
Sure. I mean, well, firstly, I think the digital proposition is quite broad. So Bletchley, firstly, really pleased that that one of your subscribers enjoyed it. Bletchley is a lovely format, and it's a great game. Sits alongside a couple of other similar formats, but it is one format in a portfolio of quite a lot that we now have in this digital space. So already we have, I think now 9 play at home downloadable games. We launched a new Alice in Wonderland game just last week, actually. We are growing our Zoom into the Room digital portfolio as well. So we're adding to that, again, actually Alice in Wonderland and Pirates, sort of Blackbeard's Treasure, which is our Pirates game. So that gives basically we're doubling up on the Zoom into the Room proposition. Aside from that, we've got a number of corporate propositions, as you're aware, which we play over our platforms, everything from kind of quizzes to sort of team member guided experiences for teams. So our digital platform is really getting quite significant. And as you can imagine, as we learn more, we will be expanding it further. But I think what you'll start to see a little more of is depth in the content. Alice would be a really good example. You know, we started off with Alice in very much in a physical room. It was very, very, very well received by our customers. We then moved from there and we created our downloadable Alice game. As I say, we launched that last week. Again, seems to have kicked off pretty well. We are doing Zoom into the room for Alice, and then also when we are able to reopen, we will be reopening with virtual reality Alice in Wonderland as well. So it gives a real depth to that content. And so we're thinking both in terms of breadth, you know, number of options, and also depth in terms of really getting into a narrative.
Yeah, absolutely. And someone continues on that theme, says, can you talk about the uptake of the digital platform and the valuation and future importance to the business?
Sure. Well, I think, you know, I was delighted just by the way that you picked up on the announcements that we made around Christmas. You know, we were off a standing start, and, you know, sometimes adversity facilitates, you know, the right kind of pivoting and the right sort of strategic change. But for us, when we were forced to close our doors, it forced us to look at other revenue options. And, you know, from a standing start, as you're aware, you know, we served over 6,000 customers in December alone. That digital proposition was generating somewhere in the region of, you know, £250,000, of which most is profit. So it forms a very significant part, or at least it will go on to form a very significant part of our earnings. And I just want to bring that back to the context of our current unit economics from our existing physical sites. You know, for us, we talk about this a lot. You'll have read this a lot for our business, but we talk about two kind of key numbers, if you like, three if you include the return on capital. We talk about £10,000 a week in sales, and we talk about £3,000 a week in profit. So £150,000 on average for EBITDA for a physical site. Contextualize that against what we've seen already coming out of that digital business. You know, sort of 200 and something thousand pounds of digital from a standing start. That's really significant in the context of what we have in terms of our physical estate. So without doubt, it's going to be something that we look to carry forwards.
Yeah, and as far as that's concerned, I mean, who are your competitors in that field? Because of course, there's plenty of competition in escape rooms and lots of independent, you know, single-owned places. But that size, like that one game you did, 347 people, phenomenal. Who else can do that kind of thing?
Yeah, I mean, look, we're lucky. We're set apart, I guess, from so many of the other operators in our space because we have scale of teams and we have scale of locations, and that gives us the facility to do these things at scale. You know, we're blessed to have a team of 140 people at a site level so far, growing every day, and that allows us to facilitate a lot more games together. So you know, I suppose candidly, there is nobody else able to do that exactly in our space. Now, that said, the competition is always going to be a little bit broader. The competition is never just about who else has got an escape room that's digital. The competition is always about what else could I be doing for my digital dollar with my team at work. So, you know, our landscape is, well, firstly, the landscape is much broader perhaps than just people looking for escape rooms, but also the competition probably sits there. But directly, I think it would be very, very difficult for anybody else in our space to do exactly what we're doing. Yeah.
Next question is, would you consider a subscription model with exclusive new games for subscription holders?
Look, I mean, always incredibly open to good suggestions. So certainly subscription is not something we've done a lot of. We do have a subscription model fairly recently launched for downloadable games. So for £10 a month, you get access to each one of our downloadable games, and they kind of come out sequentially. It's a lovely gift. So basically for £50, you get access to those products. Subscription is not something that we've done any more of over and above that, but definitely always looking at great ideas.
Cool. How do you differentiate yourselves from competitors?
I suppose there are a few ways. I mean, I guess, so at the risk of sounding very arrogant, and forgive me if I do, I think our differentiation is the premium nature of the offering that we have. And so everything that we do our damnedest to make it the very best that it can be. And so that's everything from the locations that we take, to the quality of the builds, to the investment, to be fair, in the builds, to the quality of our teams, to the quality of our training, so that our experiences are 5-star across the board. I think the real tangible differential, I can talk about the quality of games, but of course that's fairly subjective, and lots of people might have a view that their games are as good. I think the tangible thing to cling on to is the quality of our physical estate. We are the only escape room operator in the UK able to access the sorts of schemes that we do. And we are only able to do that because of our scale, because of our premium nature, because of our covenant, because of our positioning as a PLC. And that, if nothing else, that will be the thing which allows us to stand apart from everybody else.
Yeah, well, do you know, I was talking with the guys on the weekend podcast, and we're all holders, but we're saying small things stand out, and I can't see how other people don't see this. Even down to the quality of RNS writing, from the social media posts, from the videos you do, promotional. So the branding's very good. It's high quality. It just stands out. And to me, it does seem like a premium brand. The way it's presented, all of it.
Well, we care. We deeply, deeply care about the customer journey, and absolutely every touch point in that customer journey has to be of an equal standard. There's no point having a great game if the journey that got you there is, subpar. If you're going to put yourself out there as a premium operator, everything you have to do needs to be premium. Otherwise, don't do it. In our view, at least that's the ethos that we stand behind.
Yeah, and of course, and by doing that, you get people like the BBC and Netflix, hooking up with you, and otherwise you wouldn't get that. We couldn't avoid COVID, of course. It's uncertain when lockdown restrictions will be lifted for leisure activities. How concerned are you about this? Do you have enough cash?
Well, let's take that in two parts. I think firstly, there is seemingly a narrative shift, with respect to the government's communication on COVID. I think, over the last few days, we have moved slightly more, dare I say, into a message of positivity, which is that, vaccinations have gone extremely well. First 15 million have been administered. We're exactly on track. In some respects, we're leading the way in that regard. So that narrative change, you're starting to feel that is shifting. You're starting to feel now about the conversations, the glimmers of hope, if you like, the green shoots of how the economy might now go on to reopen. And that's very, very different to where we were 4 to 6 weeks ago. And so in and of itself, that leads me to imagine that we will start to see lots of elements of the economy opening up, albeit presumably with degrees of restriction, over the next perhaps 4 to 6 weeks. So that said, even if the restrictions stayed in place for a lot longer, and even if I'm very wrong and actually we remain locked down for much, much longer than I anticipate, you have to remember we are in a very fortunate position for an industry in our space to have cash behind us. So I think our last RNS, which would have come out in January, we put out a sort of year-end closed cash position of around £2.7 million. You'll be aware clearly that we raised another 1.4 in round numbers a couple of weeks back, of which around 300,000 up front is going to look to fund the first tranche of the French deal, which we put together. But basically, you can see, given our burn rate, maybe £200,000 a month, a little under perhaps, we have enough cash to carry this for as long as we need to. And that's what allows us to have the confidence in the background to continue growing as well and continue building sites.
Yeah, well, I looked at that. Someone asked that on Twitter, and I said, well, looking at that, they have enough cash for 17 months. Now, I can't see lockdown going anywhere near that level. And let's be honest, if our hospital admissions come down, as they are, then what's the justification for staying locked down? And also, I think the domestic market, leisure and restaurants and pubs will do very well initially, because travel, I think, will still be restricted because other countries are not going to be vaccinated. But I just think every day is a day closer anyway, And so,
I agree with you. I couldn't agree with you more wholeheartedly. And more than that, I think, if you step up a level, we as human beings, we're social beings. We crave togetherness. We crave interaction. We want to create memories. And we all know that experience is the hottest consumer demand sector, if you know, it's not really a sector, but you know what I mean. It's the hottest sort of driver of consumer demand in the marketplace at the moment. So it has to stand to reason that when we are allowed to reopen, this emergence from social Lent, which everyone's been enduring over the last couple of years, really comes to the fore, and that people are going to want to get together. They're going to want to experience, some memory making together. They're going to want to play together. They're going to want to be together. Really hard for me to see how we don't get back to a very strong period of demand.
Yeah. Do you have plans to expand in the US?
Well, absolutely. So I think you will probably be aware that we signed a area representation agreement, so ostensibly a master franchise agreement with a experienced operator over in the US. They are an interesting operator for two reasons. One, because they have an awful lot of experience of selling franchises. So they've taken many, many businesses and sold a significant number of franchises for those businesses, really garnering true scale. Moreover, they have a sort of a private equity arm, if you like, by which they fund the team who essentially represent us on the ground, the operations, the local marketing, etc., etc. So that deal's already in place. I think excitingly, the legal documentation for that, which is significant, the financial due diligence and disclosure documentation, which needs to be in place for you to be able to go forwards, is all complete. And I think really excitingly, our first discovery day, where we're meeting the first new prospects, is at the back end of this week. So from here on in, we expect to see the US become a really important part of our story, and certainly it's something that we're putting a lot of focus on as a business.
Yeah. Question: will you be developing the online and virtual offer with lower cost warehouse style sites that will provide the digital games?
Yeah, that is something that we've thought about. I have to say we've not thought about it in a significant degree of detail. But I think the idea being that, you know, if you're going to do a lot of, for example, zoom into the room, then actually take a way out of town site, much cheaper rents, build quickly, you don't need receptions, you don't need lounges, and you can get a lot of games rooms in there and operate at scale. It's definitely something that we have thought about and talked about, but it's not yet something that we are wedded to. So I can't really give you a definitive yes, we will, or no, we won't, but it's definitely in our mindset.
Yeah, I don't know how much detail you can give here, but what sort of deals have you negotiated with landlords of shopping centres, and how are these better than the pre-COVID deals?
Sure. So I suppose, again, let's take that in two parts. One is access. So part one is simply access to sites, which never before would we have imagined being able to achieve. Give you an example. We open in Norwich, and in the Inti Centre where we are in Norwich, Chapel Fields, if anybody knows it. The unit that we have is the very, very first unit that you see as you enter through the main doors on the left-hand side. That is a absolute Class A+ grade site, which never could we have imagined being in. Previously, it was a Café Rouge. Café Rouge, known for taking premium sites in premium locations, to be fair, at premium cost. 2 years ago, that was just not even an option for us. But of course, the landscape's changed. So not only are we're in on extremely attractive terms. Watford would be another very, very good example. The large shopping centre in Watford, again, notoriously successful scheme. Historically, it's done very, very, very well for all operators who have been in there. And again, just a scheme that small businesses like ours just could never really have access. And yet now we're getting in there and we're getting in on incredibly good deals. So capital contributions, rent-free periods, etc. These are multi-year deals that we're being offered to get into these schemes on underlying rents which are materially lower than they would have been 18 months ago.
Yeah. Same Basingstoke, and we went there and checked that one out. And the footfall in that place is huge. It's one of the biggest shopping centres around. And people, while we're there, just waiting to do our game, they're only there for 5 minutes, and we had about sort of 5-10 people just walk in, and because it's quite intriguing. It's not like any other shop. When you see one of those in a shopping centre, think, what is this? Because I can't see anything in the windows being sold, and people just walking in. So what is this? And asking about it. So it's quite intriguing. But a footfall really helps, doesn't it?
Well, Footfall's massive, and when we opened our first tranche of sites a couple of years back, we tried lots of different formats, as you would imagine. Obviously one of the things you're desperate to do is learn from every new site that you take, and so we tried sites that had very little visibility. We tried sites that had a lot, and so on. We tried sites in high dense shopping centres to lower dense high streets, etc. And without doubt, that high dense, unsurprisingly, that high dense shopping centre environment is where certainly historically we were winning, and I'm sure we will win again once we're reopened from COVID.
Yeah. In which year do you predict that the Escape Fund will have positive earnings?
I think I might answer that in a slightly politician's fashion, if I may, and come at it from a slightly different perspective, which is to say that we always talked about requiring a density of 15 sites in the UK in order to have a fighting chance of being a positive cash generative business. Well, now we have more than that in a sense. So we have 13 open plus Kingston and the 3 I've already mentioned, Dubai, Paris and Brussels, plus we're building Milton Keynes. So in essence, that's 18 units. We have now all the wherewithal to become a profitable, cash generative business, simply subject to demand returning from COVID and the lockdowns, and to very reasonable assumptions in the rest of the business. So the only reason I'm not committing to a time frame is simply because we need to see demand come back. We need to see the world open up again after COVID. But the absolute pertinent point is that we now have those foundations in place from which we will be able to build a cash generative business.
Absolutely. Will you be expanding into virtual reality online educational space in the future, or anything like that?
We've talked before about our sort of 5-point strategy for value creation into the longer term. And one of those points has always been in and around increasing product breadth and depth. And as you can consider that, the education market, i.e. increasing your audience breadth, if you like, the education market is clearly one that exists, is large and is attractive. It's not yet a market that we have focused on. You might imagine a small business, we've got a fairly limited resource. We have to be very, very targeted about what we focus upon. But education is a big market. I think gamified learning is hot, and it's definitely somewhere that we feel that we'll be able to add some value at a point.
Okay, last two. How does escape hunt ensure repeat business? With something like bowling, you go back and again. With escape rooms, if you know how to escape, you know the solution. Why would you return?
Sure. I think to be honest, that's quite a straightforward question to answer. And I think, not in any way looking to be disparaging towards bowling operations at all, but actually the repeat participation in bowling business is very low. I think it was true to say that in Hollywood Bowl's annual report, they mentioned that 70% of players hadn't returned within a 12-month period. So participation in bowling is actually fairly low, despite it being very much a repeatable activity. And what you need to remember about our sites as well is that if typically we have 6 rooms in a site, we also therefore have 6 different game room themes, all of which are different. So if you assume a similar level of participation to bowling, multiplied up by the fact you have 6 different experiences, actually you've got an awful lot of scope for repeat business. And that's aside from any of the outdoor offerings, the digital offerings and so on that we have in play as well.
Yeah, it's funny because I've seen that question before, and I said, have you been to some of these sites? Some of them have 4 to 6 different games. And when we went to the one in Basingstoke, we came out and said, I want to do that one next. And that was the first thing we said. We want to try the virtual reality one. And then the lockdown happened, so we didn't. So yeah, I think it's a lot more variety than there is with bowling. Yeah. Okay, here's the big one then. The final one to finish on, Richard. What's the long-term ambition for Escape Hunt 3 to 5 year plan? How does Escape Hunt plan to capitalize on its digital platform and become a truly global company?
Sure. That's certainly the big one. And, I guess at its heart, what we need to do is to continue to do exactly what it is that we're doing. As I said before, we laid out when we were last on the road, a 5-point plan. One of those points is quite boring insofar as it relates to infrastructure required to allow a business to grow. But if we focus in on the other 4, we talked about continuing to grow the UK estate. Well, we will absolutely do that. We've already talked about that short-term target of having 20 sites. We'll exceed that clearly. We see a longer-term target, a mid-range target of 50 sites, where Escape Hunt can exist in every major shopping centre, in every major town in the UK, and be the absolute standout operator. So that continued growth through the UK absolutely remains at the heart of what it is that we're doing here in this market. Clearly, we have on point number 2, a legacy franchise estate. And by legacy, I mean a pre-existing, pre-US franchise estate, which is cash generative for us. We will continue to nurture that business, to grow that business, to look for other opportunities to expand in those territories. And that will continue to be a cash generative part of the business for us. Point number 3, the US is really significant. It's not going to be a surprise to anybody that the potential density for sites in the US is significantly greater than the density would be over here in the UK for obvious reasons. The population is 7 times higher. So we see this partnership with Proprietors Capital Holdings as being key. We're very excited to see that kick off with the first of the discovery days, as I say, at the back end of this week. We would expect to see significant traction through that market over the next 2 to 5 years. and we expect to see, you know, absolutely us as Escape Hunt take control in that part of the entertainment world over there. And then, as I said before, point four is very much in and around this continued focus on growing product depth and breadth, and indeed customer reach. So digital has to play a very large part for us. You know, you've referenced it a couple of times, Justin, but when you are able to be playing 350 people at a time, you know you've got a product that is well worth going after. If we can work out truly how to unlock that, and we don't have the answers today, but if we can truly unlock that and work out how 350 people becomes 3,500 people, then we've got a really special extra piece of the business, if you like.
Yeah, absolutely. Marvellous stuff, Richard. Good to chat to you. And like I say, I hope we catch up in the not too distant future. But I'm very excited for Escape. And I just think you can see it's head and shoulders above the competition. And from the branding, you know, to the product. And you know, I think you got your head. The fact is, especially not only talking about RNS and smart branding, but like you say, the way you pivoted during lockdown to digital straight away, and from a get go went from nothing to like over 200,000 in revenue straight away. That you know, that points to something. That says something a lot. There aren't many businesses that can do that, you know. And now that's part of the business. Like you say, you could that one game doubled the physical footprint pretty much. And that's crazy. And the potential there is quite big, isn't it? You know.
Yeah, the potential is absolutely huge, and you know, our opportunity now is truly to unlock it.
Marvellous. Richard, good to chat to you. And like I said, hope we catch up in the not too distant future. Thanks very much.
Justin, look forward to it. Huge thanks to you. Take care.